Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video version of one of my Substack essays. But this is a live edition, so some of you are here actually catching it live on Twitch before I put it on over to YouTube. So we'll have a little bit of a chat participation element here. Oh goodness! In fact, let me rearrange my screen a little bit so everybody can see the chat. Hi, hello, good afternoon, everybody. How's it going? Thank you for hanging out with me on this fine, hot, sunny summer day. Uh, Non-recovering burnout sufferer, happy to be here. Yes, same. I am never going to be the best little boy in the world, good academic boy who does everything all the time ever again, but I do still have a need for stimulation and attention, so I'm doing things like this. Welcome, Edge Peasant, Waluigi Bowser, Mask for Mask. Who else we got here? Lysander, hello. Chicago, hello. Oh, so nice to see y'all. Thanks for hanging out on this very random impromptu stream. As many of you know, whether you're here live or you're watching the VOD, I've been recording video versions of some of my essays for accessibility purposes, for people who can't or prefer not to read a long ass piece of writing and find it more accessible to hear it read aloud to them, or who need descriptions of images and links and things like that. This is an older essay of mine that is very popular, connected with a lot of people, about burnout and how many of us, the statistics show and the research shows, never actually recover from burnout. So I thought it would be a really great one to record live because I know people would have reactions to it in the chat and their own experiences to share and maybe questions that we can get to an extent. So that's what we're here for today, to read through the essay and chat about it a little bit. So please, if you're here live, feel free to share in the chat your own reactions and feelings. I know many of you have read this piece before, or some of my writing about burnout before, or if you're on the Discord server, the Piscord, we talk about burnout and spoons and disability all the goddamn time because it's our lived reality. So I'm sure there'll be lots to get into. Um, I really need to finish my degree, and there's part of me that wants to do my MFA anyway. Edge Peasant says, "Oh goodness, I felt the siren song of the MFA when I was really getting into creative writing, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll have a community. It'll move me to make something that's like more serious art. I'm really glad I don't have that debt, and I've heard a lot of frustrating experiences from some people depending on their MFA program. But I also know people that have come out of it with a full novel written and tons of fun trauma bonds with their classmates that were worth having and all of those things. So it's definitely something that I see the appeal of more than most other graduate programs at this point in time. So yeah, I don't know. Academic burnout is a hell of a thing. Uh, Pretay Nerd, good afternoon. Yeah, good to see you. Hello, welcome. Waluigi says, I read the Substack article before, so I was confused with the stream having the same name until it's just a live read of your essay on Twitch. Yes. So if you've seen the YouTube videos that I make of my pieces lately as they're coming out, I make a video version that goes with a piece. But I wanted to make video versions of some of the greatest hits. I think this is a topic that'll resonate with a lot of people on YouTube as well, certainly. It's a topic that just, whenever I write about burnout, it hits a really big audience because so many people suffer from it and have not really had their actual experiences of how deep it is and how boundless it can be validated. And the research that's come out even in just the last couple of years has really shown that burnout is not just this short blip on the radar, at least not clinical burnout. The piece distinguishes between a short period of burnout and clinical burnout. But for people who have hit the clinical burnout point, this idea that you just need to rest a little bit and set boundaries and then you're going to bounce back is not borne out by how our bodies feel and what our lives look like. And so talking about that is really important. I recently learned that the M in my master's degree does not stand for master's, it stands for magister. So I will be requiring people to address me as Magister Mask. Mask for Mask, are you British by any chance, or like Canadian? That definitely sounds like I'm gonna not be as British phobic as I sometimes playfully am, but just like the words that they use over there are just like so formal and like they hit an American ear as like silly and fun, washing dishes with fairy liquid and stuff like that. The MFA program I want to do has been free since 2020 too. What the? A free MFA? Is it theater, voice, writing? I'm very curious what that is, Edge Peasant. Um, very intrigued by free MFA. So what we're going to do today is we're going to read through the essay, respond to questions, provide descriptions of images and links, and have a little chatty chat about the topic. And hopefully have a good time just thinking about how busted and burnt out and depleted we all are. Ivy League academia is so intimidating. It's traumatic to return to my undergrad school, so I'm looking to do my last semester elsewhere. Uh, Ivy League academia, I know I don't need to tell you this, Edge Peasant, but it's complete BS. It's all bluster and elitism. The reason these institutions exist is to just give credentials to wealthy people and to pick a handful of poor people who the ruling class think will be useful to them and give them a credential so that they can be better exploited and folded into and assimilated into the hierarchy. I know you already know this. I don't need to preach to the choir necessarily, but a lot of times, a lot of Ivy League programs and departments aren't even actually necessarily that good. Like when you really look at, in my field, the top tier social science research, it comes out of, Stanford has a good social psychology program, but like Ohio State, a public university, has a much better psychology program than a lot of your Ivy League schools. It's all just bluster and investment from an incredibly rich alumni base and things like that. It's not necessarily even the best school. So it's all hype, it's all sizzle and no steak. Don't let them get to you. Uh, I know it's hard. I feel like I need to say this more often for people to just not be impressed by academia in general because I forget, like I've been so disillusioned with it and I've seen just the kind of like ignorance and like lack of ability to function and cope or understand human beings' lives that like is in academia. So I know it's not impressive anymore, but yeah, don't ever let it intimidate you. Lysander says, got into a burnout last year, and resting actually made me more burned out and depressed because it made me realize it wasn't working. Lamau. This is something I would like to write about soon, I think. Uh, Rest by itself definitely has not helped me with burnout recovery because I have stimulation needs, intellectual challenge needs. I need to keep my brain busy, and I'm just gonna ruminate on things that make me upset and past traumas and shit. If I'm purely just trying to rest, I think that's true for many neurodivergent people. And what I've really been doing this summer to really supercharge my burnout recovery, whatever we want to call it, has been like dedicated special interest time. Really locking in and treating my special interests almost like they're a job and doing time theft to focus on my special interests. That is something that has really given me that sense of being motivated again for the first time in a long, long ass time. Edge Peasant call it border collie brain. I have a ADHD friend who also calls it that. Maybe that's just like in the ADHD world. But if you don't have things to kind of stimulate you and challenge you sometimes, that can make you anxious too. Doing nothing is not necessarily the solution always. It's finding things that are meaningful. Um, Let me know if you need some experiences or thoughts if and when you are writing about it. That would be very helpful, Lysander, if you don't mind me, potentially anonymizing or however you want to do it, interviewing you. Speaking on that experience, I think is really important because it's almost another form of masking or neuroconformity where a lot of neurodivergent people, we think our recovery has to look the way we've been told recovery looks, and that relaxing has to look the way it looks for the neurotypical ideal person who we all know here that isn't a real person. It's just a standard and a social expectation. But we think we're supposed to like rest and journal and take bubble baths and get pedicures or whatever the hell else. And a lot of times for us, it's like, no, I need to be a freak on the internet. I need to tinker and make some kind of weird thing. I need to work on a project that's stimulating to me. And that's actually going to be what helps. Um, A lot of times, what I think is recovery is just a freeze response, says Edge Peasant. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And there's different phases for different things. You know, sometimes you do just need to be in that kind of state, but it's not enough. Like, especially if you're trying to find a sense of motivation again, even if it's not to be productive, it's just I want to care about something. And we'll talk about that in the piece. A big hallmark of burnout is not caring about things anymore, not being able to care about anything. And so you kind of do at a certain point, even if you're never going to be productive again, certainly not on the level before burnout, you kind of have to find something that you care about that makes you want to stay alive. And it's really hard to rebuild that ability, I find. And often the rest has to come first, but it's not enough. So without further ado, I'm going to hop into the piece and start reading it, and then we'll chat. Lysander says, whereas many of my stressed friends are excited to relax and do nothing, I'm really excited about classes starting again soon and just having something to do. Yes, I strongly relate to that. That autism plus being a little bit chaotic, or ADHD or whatever you want to call it, experience of like, I need structure, but I also hate structure. I hate being made to do things, but I also like being made to do things in certain ways, which we've all talked about before. It's a very strange paradox, and it's very hard to figure yourself out, especially when you have narratives about what you think you're supposed to be doing, and prior narratives about what's worked for you in the past or what works for other people. That's Just Crazy asks, what is your profile picture? Why grooming? Because we are not playing respectability politics here, and we are not afraid of the things that people can attempt to accuse us of being in a way to spread sex negativity, homophobia, transphobia, transmisogyny, and all number of other things. In a very lovely fashion, a pet grooming retail store in one of the big gay neighborhoods here in Chicago put their pride flag right under their pet grooming flag to create that lovely moment of grooming pride. And so we use that to spit in the face of anyone who's going to accuse us of abusing children by being open about who we are and spreading information about the queer community. So we're we're proud, quote unquote, groomers here, proud egg crackers, promoters of kinky, depraved lifestyles, and so on, and fans of child liberation and sex neutrality. So that's why grooming. Thanks for asking. All right, let's dive into the essay. I keep getting good messages in the chat. Mask for Mask says, I also have to say that so many more of my normie friends are much more fur positive these days. Yes. I think people are realizing in certain pockets that all of this sex negativity and fear of corruption that gets lobbed onto the weirdest among our community is a warning sign of what's going to come for all of us. And so you have to stand by the ABDLs, by the DDLGs, by the furs, by the age regressors, by the CNCers, by all the people with the fetishes and kinks and divergent practices that are the most likely to be demonized, and say, we love them. Get away from my family. Don't touch them. That's my purse. I don't know you, etc., etc., and so on. Waluigi Bowser says, I do not think neurotypical is a real person. I don't see the point of neuro nonconforming existing when neuronormative is already right there. Like, what is the difference between those two things when they mean the same thing? I mean, I think they're both fine. I think neuronormative, normative is a word that has multiple different connotations sometimes. And so I find that a little bit more confusing to people because sometimes they're bringing a different connotation to it. Because normative can mean like meeting the current societal standard, which makes sense, but sometimes people interpret it as being this should be the standard. And so it just is a little bit confusing to some people. So I like neuro nonconforming. I think that's more, I find that personally more clear. because I think nonconformity is a spectrum of both just what you are and also what you're capable of being. Like some of us can make the choice to temporarily neuroconform, but some of us do not have that ability. So I personally prefer neuroconformity, neurononconformity. I don't want to make any declarations about what other people should use. I think they both, if you're in this world, you kind of know what the person's trying to say. But yeah, I don't know. That's just personal taste. Maybe writerly and like audience wise more than anything. But it, like, I find the word neuro non-normative more confusing than neuro non-conforming. I don't know. That's just me. Um, but but it's all good. All right. I'm gonna hop into the piece for real this time. Here's the guts of my stream, and here's the essay. If you have not read it yet, you can read it on drdevinprice.substack.com for free. All my writing is always free forever. I don't believe in intellectual property. I believe that ideas should be accessible as widely as possible, and that's part of why I'm reading it out loud to you. This one came out last year in October and generated a really positive response. Definitely the biggest numbies that anything on Substack that I've written has done, and got me a bunch of subscribers who then immediately canceled once I started posting about like sex and stuff. The piece is called You Might Not Recover from Burnout Ever, What Grows from the Ashes of Your Old Life. The cover image at the top here is from Unsplash, from Volodymyr Hushchenko, and it is a really high resolution image of a pile of ash, mostly like white ash dust over burnt coals or pieces of wood, to show that this wood or coal or what have you has been completely transformed chemically from the burning process. You can't unburn something. It's transformed into something new. And we can think about ourselves potentially as being transformed by burnout into ash. Though ash has its purposes, has its function in nature, but it's very different from a piece of wood or charcoal that hasn't been burned. And with that, I'm going to start reading to you. Hia has been unemployed for a little over 2 years, and she can't see that ending anytime soon. Her burnout has been catastrophic, and so far, bottomless. I went on short-term disability at first for my mental health, but after that ran out, I used up all of my sick days. Then I applied for a longer medical leave, which shockingly I got for a little while, she explains. I was luckier than most people who don't get any paid time off, but then they mysteriously eliminated my position. I've been floundering ever since. Hia worked in media for a podcast network that relied upon subscription drives and deals with advertisers. Tracking down new funding sources and keeping ad buyers satisfied was a large component of her job. The work was filled with uncertainty, and the company culture suffused with blame. No amount of dedication from Hia was enough to satisfy her bosses, and her relationship with clients always felt shaky and had to be constantly maintained. She was forever connected to her phone, having nightmares about brand partnerships and ad read recording sessions. By the time she was hospitalized for exhaustion and thoughts of self-harm, Hia had been working day and night without any real weekend to speak of for years. Burnout was Hia's mind's way of slamming on the brakes, forcing her to stop pushing herself when nothing else could. In the past 2 years, what has Hia done? I've slept a lot, she says, but not well. I've watched Sex and the City all the way through, about 15 times. I've started a dozen craft projects and didn't make progress on any of them. And I replaced all my dishes with paper plates because all I do is order takeout. I don't cook. She feels completely demoralized. And she doesn't understand why such a long period of rest hasn't yielded any improvement in her health. After 25 months, she still doesn't have the energy to clean her house, run errands, or attend job interviews. Her attention and energy are still completely shot. Even something as simple as filling out a job application is a thing I have to beat myself up for days to do. And when it's done, it's like, okay, back to the couch to collapse in a depression nest for the day, Hia says. She thinks for a moment. How am I supposed to keep a job when I can barely apply to one? What I want to say to Hia, but don't, is that perhaps she'll never be able to work a job again at all. Like a great many burnout sufferers, her productive capacity may never rebound to its pre-burnout levels. The skill losses she's endured and the damage done to her body by overwork might never be fully repaired. I want to share that burnout is a seismic shift in a person's priorities, one that the body enacts by force as a self-preservation tactic, and that some people are so transformed by the experience they can never piece their old life back together. But what's most difficult and most delicate to tell Hia is that all of this might be a good thing. In many ways, burnout is an attempt by the body to give us our freedom back, but it can only do so by taking away our ability to be exploited. Here's another Unsplash photo by Paul Boulay. It is a completely dark black background with a small little snaking curl of a flame. Very abstract, very pretty. And he has a whole series of shots of flame that look like this. Marquez the GM, hey, hello, asked, hey, Devin, have you played Wanderstop? No, I have not. I have not heard of it. Is it something I should consider for a stream? I definitely need recommendations. Once it gets cold out, I would love to get back into game streaming again. It's about burnout. Oh, shit. Okay. I will look into it later. Someone remind me. What is burnout, really? In the past decade, it's become quite the popular subject, with numerous mass-market books, including mine, being published about its various triggers, structural causes, and remedies. And it's hardly surprising that's been the case. So here I've linked to several books that are all about burnout that are very popular. Work Won't Love You Back by Sarah Jaffe. That one's a little bit more labor movement focused. Burnout by the Nagoski siblings, one of whom at least is autistic, maybe both of them. How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell, Resisting the Attention Economy, all incredibly popular, successful books that really reflect the moment of being very interested in burnout and burnout recovery that has reached a huge audience of people because it's so timely. Today's average worker is overextended far beyond anything seen in recent history, logging longer hours than ever, often for multiple part-time or gig economy bosses, in return for dwindling pay and no benefits. Digital tools make it possible for obligation and demand to invade every moment of our days. Our bosses always within arm's reach, a hail of new information, notifications, and messages designed to be distracting, constantly raining down and causing us stress. And I have links to a ton of research there throughout that paragraph showing that the average workday is longer, people are more likely to have multiple jobs with no benefits, pay has not been growing in concert with the length of the workday growing, and the psychological toll of being always online, whether that's via social media or via Slack and email, making you accessible to your employer. We did not evolve to be so much, do so much, or process so much information. And when a person is met with more obligations than they could ever reasonably meet, their typical response is to push themselves even harder at first, feeling lazier and lazier as their to-do list only grows in length, before ultimately collapsing in exhaustion. And that's a phenomenon that I write about in my first book, Laziness Does Not Exist, that the longer your to-do list is, the lazier you feel. Because even though on paper you're actually doing more than somebody with a shorter list of obligations, all you can see is the to-do list items that you're not reaching. And so you never feel like you're doing enough. You never feel satisfaction, all while driving yourself to work more and more and more, which really sets you up to take a very severe psychological toll. It's no wonder so many people are feeling broken under all of this weight and wondering when they finally will be put back together. And that's often where the public conversation about burnout ends, with an acknowledgement of its many causes and an affirmation that it is horrible, but the assumption that recovering to pre-burnout productivity levels is both possible and desirable. The data does not support the assumption that all burned out people can recover. And when we fully appreciate what burnout signals in the body and where it comes from on a social, economic, and psychological level, it should become clear to us that there's nothing beneficial in returning to an unsustainable status quo. The term burned out is sometimes used to simply mean stressed or tired, and many organizations benefit from framing the condition in such light terms. Short-term, casual burnout, like you might get after one particularly stressful work deadline or following final exams, has a positive prognosis. Within 3 months of enjoying a reduced workload and increased time for rest and leisure, about 80% of mildly burned out workers are able to make a full return to their jobs. But there's a lot of unanswered questions lurking behind this happy statistic. For instance, how many workers in this economy actually have the ability to take 3 months off work to focus on burnout recovery? What happens if a mildly burnt out person does not get that rest and has to keep toiling away as more deadlines pile up? And what is the point of returning to work if the job is going to remain as grueling and uncontrollable as it was when it first burned the worker out? Few organizations stand to benefit from confronting these questions. And so, for most laborers who are feeling stressed and overwhelmed, even mild signs of burnout go neglected. Burnout that is not treated swiftly can become far more severe. Clinical psychologist and burnout expert Orno van Dam writes that when left unattended or forcibly pushed through, mild burnout can metastasize into clinical burnout, which the International Classification of Diseases, or the ICD, defines as feelings of energy depletion, increased mental distance, and a reduced sense of personal agency. Clinically burned out people are not only tired, they also feel detached from other people and no longer in control of their lives, in other words. And I do just want to take a moment to highlight that. I know many of us here already know this very intimately, but burnout is not just being tired or unmotivated or even being jaded. We see a real decline in people's ability to be emotionally invested, to bond with other people, to even understand why they cared about the work that burned them out in the first place. Other researchers describe burnout as consisting of 3 dimensions: exhaustion, a reduced sense of accomplishment, and depersonalization, also known as a lost sense of self or a sense of disconnection from one's own life. They can no longer feel internally rewarded by what work they do complete and may lose touch with the values that once mattered to them and drove them to pursue work in the first place. Additional symptoms such as sleep issues, gastrointestinal problems, increased sensory sensitivities, cognitive decline, pain, and heart palpitations are typically also observed in burnout sufferers. Clinical burnout sufferers also tend to become profoundly jaded about the state of the world, find it difficult to care for others as well as themselves, and may become impulsive, easily irritated, and prone to risk-taking. This is the kind of soul-crushing, physiologically deteriorating burnout I described myself and countless others suffering from in my book, Laziness Does Not Exist. The burnout that has you dragging your body across a bathroom floor to cough up blood before wiping your face off, downing a shot, and stepping back onto the sales floor with a false smile on your face and your soul rotting away inside of you. This is a photo of the book, Laziness Does Not Exist, across a kind of orangey red backdrop. I'm getting a bit of a flashback here reading this passage talking about a person vomiting in the bathroom at work, vomiting blood in the bathroom at work, and then dragging themselves back to work, because there's a person that I profiled in Laziness Does Not Exist, a bartender and bar owner who that was his experience. And in the time since writing this piece, he's actually passed away. It was a friend of mine, Michael. He was a really hardworking person from a really impoverished family with a lot of trauma. I talk about this in the book. He, like a lot of service industry folks, was working multiple jobs at multiple different bars. He would log, sometimes hundreds of hours in a week. And even if he tried to travel to visit friends or family, he was picking up bartending shifts in those cities he was traveling to. He drank heavy. He smoked heavily. He made jokes about not thinking that he would survive a long time. He owned a bar with his mother for a brief period of time, and it was very difficult. And he was difficult to be around in that time. Also, his employees had a hard time. All managers are bastards, even our friends sometimes. And the bar folded, and he continued bartending, and recently he had gotten sick, and he was in the ICU, and the doctors said they had never seen someone with such a low blood oxygen level still be lucid, which he had a really dark sense of humor, so I'm sure he found that really funny, and probably was kind of proud that like he had smoked so heavily for so long that he could survive on very little blood oxygen and still be able to speak and think. He had that kind of sense of humor, but unfortunately, he did not make it through that weekend. So I share that knowing that he was comfortable with me sharing his story in the book, um, and having his story kind of told by like artist friends and things like that. But you know, that's the toll that burnout takes you to, because that period where he was sick in that way, that was years ago, when I wrote about it in the book that came out in 2021, and he never really stopped working that hard, and unfortunately he didn't make it. So thanks again, Michael. You jag off for sharing your story with me, and fuck you for not turning it around in time, buddy, because we miss you. But and thank you Edge Peasant for the condolences. But yeah, he did have a very nice memorial here in Chicago. He was beloved of many people in the arts, in theater. Some other writers that I admire greatly were very close to him, and so his legacy lives on. And I'm sure that people who are cursing his name for him being kind of an ornery, imperfect person, his memory will live on with them too. Thank you, Spectorg, for your comment. Thank you for sharing what happened to your friend. I remember him from the book. Yeah. He was a one of a kind, true Chicago boy, like South Side shit talker, ballet dancer, great friend, really good friend to me. We had a dead dad gathering together once that shortly before he died, he texted me about and said that he really remembered fondly. So Michael, you jag off, fuck you. I'm sure that's what you'd want to hear. Yeah, that's a true Chicagoan right there. True Chicago boy in a way that very few people are anymore. Like, he had the accent, he had the vibe. I was once in a car with him, and somebody was blocking the road, and he pulled a tire iron out of his trunk to go and like intimidate the person who was blocking his car. Like a true fighter. Juicy Waters says, that's so sad. I've definitely been close to absolutely ruining my health for survival. Yeah. And me too, multiple times. I've been very fortunate to be able to dial things back after it's happened, but some of us don't make it. And I think the best we can do is try to remember that, and in their honor, take care of ourselves the way we wish they had taken care of themselves, even if we really find it hard to do. So thank you, Michael. And I hope it meant something to you, buddy, that that your work had an impact on people in so many different ways. This is exactly the degree of burnout that Hia suffered before her medical leave. I couldn't add up columns on a spreadsheet because I could not get my eyes to uncross, she says. I went to the emergency room because I thought I might be pre-diabetic. I was, actually, but that wasn't the reason my eyes were blurry. It was the stress. I couldn't swallow. I woke up at 4 in the morning to write emails, and I couldn't get back to sleep if I didn't finish something. As her symptoms worsened, she became despondent and annoyed with her friends, wondering why she even bothered staying alive. Unfortunately, clinical burnout has quite a dismal trajectory. Multiple studies by Van Dam and others have found that clinical burnout sufferers may require a year or more of rest following treatment before they can feel better, and that some of burnout's lingering effects don't go away easily, if at all. I just want to take a moment to highlight that. Mild burnout, non-clinical burnout, requires 3 months of rest to recover, which most people can't get in this economy. Clinical burnout, which is far more serious, requires a year or more of rest before people start to recover in most studies. And that's still a partial recovery, not a complete recovery. In one study conducted by Anita Eskildsen, for example, burnout sufferers continued to show memory and processing speed declines 1 year after burnout. Their cognitive processing skills improved slightly since seeking treatment, but the experience of having been burnt out had still left them operating significantly below their non-burned out peers or their prior self, with no signs of bouncing back. So here's a little research roundup pointer for y'all. Here they're comparing burnout sufferers both pre and post burnout. So comparing how individuals have changed over time, what we sometimes call within subjects, because you're looking at changes within the person. And they also did what's called between subjects comparisons. So they're comparing burnt out people to non-burned out people as well. So on both lines of comparison, people who have been burnt out see declines in cognitive processing speed and skill. So they're both worse off than their prior self, and they're also worse off than people who have never burnt out, which that's a really clever, nice design to be able to do those kind of comparisons both within and between people. Very helpful. It took 2 years for subjects in one of Van Dam's studies to return to normal levels of involvement and competence at work. So how capable are they of doing their job? How kind of cognitively and emotionally present are they at their job following an incident of clinical burnout? However, even after a multi-year recovery period, they still performed worse than the non-burned out control group on a cognitive task designed to test their planning and preparation abilities. Though they no longer qualified as clinically burned out, so they had made a recovery in that sense, former burnout sufferers still reported greater exhaustion, fatigue, depression, and distress compared to controls. In his review of the scientific literature, Van Dam reports that anywhere from 25% to 50% of clinical burnout sufferers do not make a full recovery, even 4 years after their illness. And I just want to take a moment to pause on that and speak on that. Anywhere from 25% to 50% of clinical burnout sufferers do not recover, even after 4 years. So that is anywhere from a really sizable chunk, a fourth, to a near majority. About half of burnout sufferers don't recover, even after 4 years. So if you are in the shit right now, keep that in perspective for yourself, please. If you are in the early years of coping with burnout, you might be in that 25 to 50% who are not going to get back, at least not anytime soon. Studies generally find that burnout sufferers make most of their mental and physical health gains in the first year after treatment, but continue to underperform on neuropsychological tests for many years afterward, compared to control subjects who were never burned out. People who have experienced burnout report worse memories, slower reaction times, less attentiveness, lower motivation, greater exhaustion, reduced work capability, and more negative health symptoms, long after their period of overwork has stopped. It's as if burnout sufferers have fallen off their previous life trajectory and cannot ever climb fully back up. So if you're a visual thinker, that may be one way to kind of conceive of it, that burnout sufferers were on a particular course of ability, productivity, what have you, and then they hit this wall that brings them down. And even though they might begin to climb back up again one day, they're never going to reach the path that they were on before. Hello, May Valence. Welcome. And that's just among the people who receive some kind of treatment for their burnout and have the opportunity to rest. I found one study that followed burned out teachers for 7 years and reported over 14% of them remained highly burnt out the entire time. So 25 to 50% of burnout sufferers didn't recover after 4 years. In one study, 14% of teachers had not recovered from burnout even after 7 years. These teachers continued feeling depersonalized, emotionally drained, ineffective, dizzy, sick to their stomachs, and desperate to leave their jobs for the better part of a decade. But they kept working in spite of it, or more likely from a lack of other options, lowering their odds of ever healing all the while. Here's another image of flames. It's by Andy Watkins on Unsplash. It's a huge plume, kind of a rounded shape of flames against a black backdrop. Very beautiful. Maybe that's just the fire sign in me, but I really love these stock images of flames in this piece. I'm very happy with them. Every burnout I've experienced has taken something away from me permanently. The first was after graduate school. I lost the ability to generate new research ideas and the will to apply to academic jobs on the tenure track. I'd been an inveterate careerist until then, applying for internships and part-time research assistantships in the summer, stacking my days with extra courses, laboratory shifts, conference applications, and meetings from August to May. I'd read more research papers than almost anyone I knew. And then suddenly, I was miserably sick, and all I wanted to do was lay down and read simple, fluffy novels and Tumblr posts. I spent a year on the couch under electric blankets, reading Game of Thrones books, penning my own horrible fantasy novel, and sucking down e-cigarettes and protein drinks. After that long, lonely year of rest, my body got better, but my mind never did. My former PhD advisor kept forwarding me job postings, wondering why I didn't apply to any of them, and asking me if he'd done something wrong to make me like this. I ignored his messages. I had passed on into another life, and nothing of the academic world could touch me. I lacked the ability to delay gratification very much at all, or run desperately towards some far-off dream. And I never got it back. Mayvalen says, I would like to see your horrible novel. I self-published some of it on Tumblr at the time. Back then, I would serialize my novels. I would post a chapter, sometimes a chapter a day, because I was crazy hyperlexic like that. It was called The Side Quest, and it was all about chronic illness in a fantasy setting. So the hero of the novel was kind of a rogue fighter, kind of storied rogue fighter who had magic abilities, but she was only really able to do the incredible things that she did in very rare moments. Otherwise, she was very exhausted and physically kind of useless. And she had a friend who was a diabetic wheelchair user that she was kind of traveling throughout the entire fantasy world to try and get basically insulin for. And they just keep running into side quests, basically, is the premise. They never actually get anywhere in their actual mission. They're just always falling into other people they need to help, or health problems they need to address, or they get stuck somewhere, or they need to just rest in a hot spring. We love a hot spring episode. And so that was kind of the conceit of the novel, is there is no plot. It's just side quest on side quest on side quest. So there was something kind of clever I was going with there, but I never finished it because it was a bunch of aimless side quests. But it was a lot of fun to write. And there are also some cringe-inducing things about it. Every character's name was a type of rock. This is pre-Steven Universe, so don't at me. But they all had geological names, and some of that doesn't hold up. Including the wheelchair user's name being Chet, which is a geological term, but it still doesn't read. It's kind of like the Tiffany problem. The name Tiffany is historically accurate for a lot of fantasy-esque medieval settings, but it reads as a modern name. So yeah, if you really want to search my archive, you could look the fiction tag. Yeah, I did used to actually use the fiction tag, or you could look for the side quest. This would have been 2016, 2017, most likely, I think. Maybe 2015, actually. And I serialized multiple science fiction novels on Tumblr as well. And some of them I published. One of them is called Corpus Callosum, and that's on Kindle and like ebook readers. And that one's the one I'm the most proud of. And it's very like a egg mode transgender sci-fi novel with very similar to some Black Mirror stuff, but before Black Mirror. So again, don't at me. Yes. So yeah, I've dabbled in fiction, and I find it very restorative often. My next burnout came after I'd been teaching part time for a few years. I was in classrooms all across the city from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. I caught laryngitis from speaking so much. So I filled my classes with videos and group worksheets. I found an online teaching job at a predatory degree mill, which I've since written about, in which I was little more than a glorified quiz scorer, which allowed me to work from home and recoup my energy somewhat. And I lounged around in coffee shops all the rest of my days, chatting with online hypnosis dominants, writing smut, and popping tablets of SAMe, which I'm on again right now, S-adenosyl L-methionine. It's a over-the-counter supplement that has some clinical support for it helping with depression, because those were the only things that brought me relief from my depression. I would go on to teach again, and to even do so well, but I never cared for it with the fervor that I had before. And I could no longer fill up every spare moment with wage-earning pursuits. I became addicted to ponderous YouTube essays and kink and not being around people, and was horizontal and blissed out in one way or another almost every night. And this is kind of the burnout recovery period that I've been talking about myself being on again lately. Special interest heavy burnout recovery time. Not doing nothing, not taking bubble baths, but like kink, sex, smut, YouTube videos, video games, play. It's like that Lady Gaga clip. Another club, another club. that seems to just really, chatting with people on Discord, not about my work, but about kink, like stuff like that. Very restorative. And other special interests like Vampire Chronicles and whatever else is tickling my fancy at the time. The last burnout has been a more continual, slow grinding one, and it came from publishing books. I enjoy writing, I do, but marketing myself hurts. When my first book came out, I was booked solid with radio interviews, podcast recordings, phone calls with print journalists, and speaking engagements that my then publicist all considered necessary. I said yes to everything, entertaining long chats with business bros who hated my book's premise during my lunch break, while I busily typed away at my next release, Unmasking Autism, and then hopping onto a Zoom for a live NPR spot. Selling thousands of books and being asked to opine about contemporary issues on a national stage had been my dream since I was a teenager. But once I was living it, I wanted to die. It was a funny curse. Releasing a book about burnout sent me into burnout. I found myself hating the people who read my work but didn't fully understand it. Repetitive interview questions drew out my impatience. I canceled events suddenly and picked fights with old colleagues for completely short-sighted reasons because I was so constantly enraged. That was a real messy year. My ability to mask as polite and neurotypical was frayed, and my capacity for long-term thinking was shot. I fully committed myself to a 24/7 dom-sub relationship without properly talking through the many logistical and psychological challenges of it, all because I was longing for a mental escape. I spent money wildly on an entirely new wardrobe and lots of fetish gear. I ate less so that I could get drunk more easily, and washed entire weekends down the drain. I never regained the ability to do a real full-court press of book publicity after that, or to perform other symbolic professional niceties. I skipped nearly every in-person gathering at my day job, and am a shaky, cold mess who can't focus at the few I do attend. When my most recent book was released, I kept having nightmares about more being demanded of me than I could handle, though ultimately, I made it out okay. I can't seem to stop writing, but I keep dreaming of the end, a life where I don't have to say anything to anyone, or ever think anything remotely original, where no one relies upon me to use my platform, and I can just be unremarkable and wordless and yet cared for, like a pet. I imagine that if I keep writing and burning myself out, the day will come when I have no more words in me at all. Um, it's really nice to revisit this now. When I wrote this in October of last year, I was amping myself up for my book release for Unmasking for Life, and that's since happened. And I've really used that to kind of close a certain chapter of my life. Whether I publish again formally with a big publisher, I don't know. I'm not thinking about that right now. I don't care about that right now. I can't. And as I said, I've been really focusing on physical and mental recovery on the terms that it means for me. And so it's really nice reading this and not completely relating to it. Like, I'm not pissed off and stressed all the time anymore. Um, Now I'm finally, like, in the last couple of months, I'm like having emotions again, and like getting to the point where when I get a request for my time, I can just say it's not going to happen and not feel guilty about saying no or not responding to the email. So we're making progress, but it was really hard, and uh, it required another physical injury, my hand injury from earlier this year, to really get to that point. Here's another great stock photo of some flames. It's a photo by Augustin. I'm sorry for my bad American voice. I can't pronounce shit. Lejo Midun on Unsplash, and it's a close-up shot of some embers, some burning flames, kind of dying out on what looks like some logs in a pile of ash. Liz Anders has been playing so much Balatro, and it's been helping heavily. Yes, those really, like, those games that just really scratch an itch in your brain, that like keep you distracted and keep your mind engaged, can be so healing. Mine was Call of Duty, not anymore, BDS, but like when I was working on Unmasking Autism, that's that time period I was talking about where I was writing a book while doing interviews and promo for another book, alone in like a therapy office I was renting, like a brick room with no heat that I had to bring a space heater to every day. And I was like writing on a hotspot and doing interviews on a Wi-Fi hotspot, and just exhausted and stressed. And the only thing that could turn my brain off when I got home at the end of the day and make me not think about the book that I was working on was Call of Duty. It was just like getting killed and killing people in like a really fast-paced, stimulating shooter. That I was horrible at. That was like the thing. That was my Balatro at that point in time. In time since, it's been Fortnite, it's been Overwatch. I still like Overwatch even though it's pretty bad. I'm kind of searching for a new game that scratches that itch. Um, so if you got any tips, I should try Balatro. I'd probably like it, but yeah, that definitely helped with my burnout recovery. It was a distracting game. This is what burnout has been like for me, and for many others who have been disabled by it. With each round, it's made me slower and more fragile, my brain sludgier and less willing to exert effort. Eventually, after a long enough period of rest, some vestige of passion does come back and directs itself at something new. But I never return to being the person I was, and I get tired more quickly each time. My burnout is unquestionably related to my being autistic, though distinguishing between autistic burnout and clinical burnout can be quite difficult. Both are a traumatic event caused by exhaustion and overwork. Both lead to depressive symptoms, anxiety, physiological unease, and the loss of skills. Both can take years to abate, with many sufferers never recovering at all. Spector says, going back to work too quickly after a gender-confirming surgery, working full-time for the first time in my life. I'm chronically ill since a young age, to be slapped back down into burnout. Over a year later, I can now only work 1 day per week. Yeah, I relate. I relate heavily. That feeling of just like you work as much as you can, and you can just feel the wall just like hit you and kind of smack you down. And it's so hard to listen to it. Most people can't afford to listen to it. And learning to listen to it is really necessary to get better. And it's so hard because it's not, that wall is not where you think it should be or where society thinks it should be, and it's so difficult. And that's where I'm at right now too, is just knowing, okay, I can do this meeting this day, I can write a little bit this day, that's it. Like I really, all told, probably have like 2 real work days per week divided up over a week, and sometimes not even that. And that's always been what my pace has actually been. And that's what a lot of people are at max capable of. But our workdays are not set up in our economy for that. Autistic burnout and other forms of clinical burnout diverge from one another in only minor ways. Autistics tend to be burned out more easily than other people because we are stressed by the sensory stimulation and unpredictability of everyday life. In a real sense, we are working more just to stay alive than other people, so of course we burn out more easily. We tend to be exhausted by masking. Just existing in public and trying to seem normal can be a source of unbearable stress for us. And when we reach the point of burnout, we often lose our ability to mask. This is why burnout is often the first sign a masked autistic person gets that they are disabled. They've built an artificial life of productivity and conformity around themselves and only recognize it to be a false one when it all comes crashing down. When we burn out, autistic people's skills losses can be a little bit more obvious than others. We may lose the ability to toilet or feed ourselves or speak. We may behave more childishly, clinging to baby blankets or hiding from strangers behind furniture, or simply collapsing into overwhelmed tears at the first sign of criticism. We typically require many years of reduced demand in order to become more functional again. But we are especially unlikely to make the full recovery that most burnout researchers chase. Our intolerance for excessive demand is a debilitating progressive illness, though it can also be a life-saving one. This is a link to another essay I've written on the topic called I'm Pathologically Demand Avoidant. It rules. My one saving grace is my fuck you instinct. That is the one thing that has kept me from being as exploited as most other people in academia. I was able to see pretty quickly that there's a lot of free labor you get asked to do that will not translate to any kind of compensation or professional success. And I was able to be like, fuck that. And when people ask just totally out of pocket things from me, like doing pro bono work, my instinct is to say, fuck that. And that spared me a lot of trouble. And most other neurodivergent people who aren't PDAers, they get sucked into that shit so often and just churned up, chewed up, spit out, smeared on the pavement. In all these ways, we burnt out autistics have a great deal in common with the 25 to 50% of clinical burnout patients who never recover, as well as any human being with a body that ages. We are forever changing, responding to our circumstances and bearing the marks of our experiences. What hurt us in the past, we withdraw from. What yields us no rewards, we learn not to pursue. And with time, what we once did, we can no longer do. This is the inevitable course of all things. A steady collapsing into slowness, neediness, and decay. But it is only a problem when we expect it not to be. And this is also part of why around this spot we talk very fluidly about what is disability, who is neurodivergent. There are no easy, fine, objective lines to be drawn on these matters because we all experience disability because the definition of abled in our society is a standard no one can meet forever. That isn't to say some people aren't wildly more disabled than others. Like, we have to be able to acknowledge that and talk about that. But we are all disabled under capitalism. Capitalism disables us by exploiting us and expecting us to be something that no human could ever be. And certainly not forever. Here is another abstract photo of a plume of smoke kind of curving upwards, almost kind of a U shape. And it's by Robert Zunikoff on Unsplash. Since her burnout began, Hia has been diagnosed with autism, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, pre-diabetes, and chronic pain syndrome. But none of that has stopped her from believing she should be more capable than she is. I get up early and sit at the computer just to punish myself. I look at job applications all day with a TV show on in the background because I don't deserve to just watch something. I promised myself I would spend my time off making pottery or running a marathon, maybe volunteering. Instead, I play games on my phone and hate myself all day. When I ask Kia if she's really internalized the fact that she is disabled, She shakes her head in resistance. Am I going to have to sleep 14 hours a day forever? I don't understand why it is taking so long to get better. Why simple things like dropping off the rent check that I always used to do with no problem seems impossible for me to do now. These are fair questions, and ones that I hear a lot, from survivors of autistic burnout and regular clinical burnout alike. No matter how profoundly drained and depressed a burned out person might be, and no matter how much mistreatment got them to that point, they are usually desperate to return to their old pre-burnout baseline as swiftly as possible, so that the rest of their life doesn't collapse. Our livelihood under capitalism hinges on our ability to produce. If we can't work, we can't pay the rent. If we're too tired to clean our homes, we're seen as less professional during Zoom-based job interviews. If we fall behind on doctor's visits and insurance paperwork because we can't focus, we may lose access to the medications and benefits that prop our lives up. We may even fear that by failing to get better, our partners and loved ones will tire of us and leave. Given all this, it makes sense that when a burned out person notices their abilities slipping, they scramble to recoup them as fast as they can. But burnout is one of the body's final defenses against unrelenting, unsustainable demand. And it is only by reevaluating those demands and abandoning a huge number of them that we can actually begin to heal. And heal as the people we are, not as the hyper-reliable workhorses we long to be. Van Dam observes that clinical burnout patients tend to suffer from an excess of perseverance rather than the opposite. This is a really interesting research finding, in my opinion. Quote, patients with clinical burnout report that they ignored stress symptoms for several years, he writes. Living a stressful life was a normal condition for them. Some were not even aware of the stressfulness of their lives until they collapsed. So this is what really distinguishes many burnout sufferers from people who don't reach that point. Instead of seeking help for workplace problems or reducing their workload, as most people do, clinical burnout sufferers typically push themselves through unpleasant circumstances and avoid asking for help. They're also less likely to give up when placed under frustrating circumstances, instead throttling the gas in hopes that their problems can be fixed with extra effort. They become hyperactive, unable to rest or enjoy holidays or vacations, their bodies wired to treat work as the solution to every problem. It is only after living at this unrelenting pace for years that they tumble into severe burnout. So that, in the literature, is what we would call an individual difference variable, that people who burn out are predisposed to thinking in this way, or they are pushed to think in this way because they're marginalized, they're in poverty, they're in an industry that's especially exploitative, and so on. In all these ways, clinical burnout once again resembles the masked autistic. In denial about the extent of their need, consumed with a self-hatred, always concealing their true feelings, incapable of trusting others to help them, and desperate to fawn, camouflage, and compensate their way to temporary social acceptance. Among both masked autistics and overworked employees, the people most likely to reach catastrophic, body-breaking levels of burnout are the people most primed to ignore their own physical boundaries for as long as possible. Clinical burnout sufferers work far past the point that virtually anyone else would begin to ask for help, take a break, or stop caring about their work. And when viewed from this perspective, we can see burnout as the saving grace of the compulsive workaholic, and the path to liberation for the masked disabled person who has nearly killed themselves trying to pass as a diligent worker bee. Most disabled people learn to stifle our inner cries of exhaustion and pain from an early age. Excruciating belly aches are just idle whining to our irritated caregivers. Our slow movements and endless questions are interpreted by teachers as us being stupid or deliberate class clowns. We're told that in the real world, nobody will have patience for our crying jags, plugged ears, desire to be hugged, or any of our usual theatrics, and that if we don't get over it and grow up, we'll be alone, unhoused, and starving. We come to assume that everyone around us must be feeling as much discomfort as we are, and that they persevere silently through it anyway. And many of the people around us are silently suffering, in fact. We start to doubt our every feeling, and so we can't distinguish between a bout of exhaustion that really merits a break and us being whiny, entitled crybabies who will never know security if we don't figure out how to toughen up. Hard work and compliance become the only tools we can use to protect ourselves, and we lean on them heavily until they give out. I lived this way, and Hia did too. Back in my adjunct teaching days, when I would get home at 10 p.m. after a full 12 hours of teaching, I would drink pot after pot of chamomile tea, vibrating with anxiety and dreading the morning to come. Some evenings, I'd go through an entire box of tea until I felt a single wisp of calmness moving into my belly. This is before weed was legal in Chicago, and I wasn't good at, getting a plug. So I was using chamomile instead. I was not a weed smoker then. But today, I would probably, if I was feeling that way, I would probably use substances to a maybe not great degree instead. My guts were continually tense and tangled up. Every morning, I started my teaching day with spurts of nervous diarrhea. I kept forcing the words out when my throat was hoarse, kept dragging my body onto campus no matter how much it protested, and kept telling myself that if I didn't toughen up, I'd never get by. Hia says that when she was working, she smoked compulsively and tore at her skin and hair. My job put me in bars until late at night working with clients. Stepping out for a cigarette was a break from all the noise. I'd suck down those Marlboro Golds and rip off my cuticles. I picked at my face in the mirror. I'd get up at 6 a.m. to work out and go into the office on no sleep. To me, that was being committed. This is a similar piece on a similar topic that I wrote while I was recording one of my audiobooks. It's called Work is a Chronic Illness. Check out that great posture on me in the recording booth. Both disabled and burnt out people are terrified of seeming lazy. In truth, no one can work 40 or more hours per week, withstand a commute, keep their car repaired, their fridge stocked, their floors mopped, their kids and pets looked after, their lawns manicured, their bodies exercised, their bills paid, and all their messages answered without help. Yet the more that a person's body and brain diverges from this impossible standard of independence, the less society regards them as human. Disabled people are denied crucial legal and economic freedoms simply because we cannot work hard enough. The world is made deliberately inaccessible to us so that forcing us to hide away so our daily struggles are not seen. This only makes other people more wary of revealing their own weaknesses. To take a sick day or use a cane is to admit you've become less capable, and therefore less worthy of esteem. I've linked to another piece here called Girls Self-Diagnosing on TikTok Aren't Why Ableism Happens. Shout out to Freddie DeBoer. For burnt-out people, the unrelenting need for rest can seem shameful, and yet it is the only way to halt the bleeding of overwork. When a long-term eating disorder patient enters into recovery, they need to ingest many thousands more calories than most people consume for a prolonged period in order to rebuild the body's damaged tissues and refuel. Their hunger becomes insistent and extreme. There is no negotiating with this need, no convincing it that it asks for too much. The eating disorder sufferer has already spent too much time denying themselves. With its extreme hunger, the body claims its survival. This is something I've also personally experienced following my big burnout, my big first burnout. I also had really bad extreme hunger because I was not eating enough and over-exercising. And you really just have to let yourself eat whatever you want to eat without any manufactured concern for nutrition or healthiness or any of that kind of policing of yourself. A ton of food. Because your body is damaged and it needs to rebuild that damage. And that does not matter what size you are, because you can be anorexic at any body size, even though the portrait of that is based on weight and emphasizing thin people. You need to repair your body, and you need to eat a lot in eating disorder recovery to rebuild tissues. I know that's very difficult and physically uncomfortable for a lot of people. And we're a harm reduction space here, so if recovery is not where you're at, you don't have to recover. Nobody should force you to do things to your body you're not ready to do and you don't want to do. Um, but if you are seeing damage that is impeding your quality of the life that you want to have, you probably need a lot more food in your body. And this is something I'm going to write more about soon in the future. Specifically, eating disorder harm reduction / recovery being accessible to autistics, and some of the problems with mainstream eating disorder recovery and why it doesn't serve a lot of neurodivergent people, and why harm reduction is necessary. But I did just want to shout that out. Among the exploited and overworked, the compulsion to sleep and stare off into space can feel similarly uncontrollable. And yet it is also a blessing, a ravenous hungering for more life. Under capitalism, it's difficult to fathom how you can even be a person when you're not doing anything impressive. But we are animals, wired to sleep, eat, drink, urinate, defecate, and stay comfortable above all else. The mere act of living is the greatest thing that we will ever create. It is our strongest drive, and it continues, sometimes with great difficulty, for as long as it can, until that great and final release from all duty. Melvalen says, I don't think the standard treatment for ED serves anyone. No, I don't think so either. It's very numbers focused. There's very little control. You're forced to eat what they make you eat in a social setting. You don't get any privacy. You don't get any control over meal times. You don't get any control over what you eat. You don't get any control over the pace at which you're supposed to gain or lose weight. They're fixated on your gaining or losing weight rather than you feeling better, or what you want, what your goals in recovery are. And they deny you a lot of, if it's an institution that you're like trapped in, they deny you a lot of things that would make your life more comfortable and connected, like your phone. So yeah, being institutionalized sucks. And if you're autistic, I think it's doubly alienating. But most ED treatment is terrible for most people. That's eating disorder treatment, not erectile dysfunction, because we love the pink pussy on E in this house. With age, all of our bodies become weaker, slower, sicker, and eventually utterly incapable of doing anything at all. We fought so hard to deny the reality of this, to imagine that we can maintain high levels of activity and accomplishment forever. But we can't. Even when we're not actively burning ourselves out, we are still getting wearier day by day. There is only one place where all of our efforts are heading, and it is our grave. We've enacted so much violence upon ourselves and others in our struggle to seem strong. We've persevered far too much. Maybe it's time to embrace being weak. This is again, a stock photo with a dark black background. There's a pair of light-skinned, I think white hands holding a sparkler, so a light spark in the dark, right? The flames have roared, the smoke has plumed, the ashes have formed, and now we have a new spark in the darkness. And this photo is by Ben Lambert, courtesy of Unsplash. Burnout has taken a lot from me, but in what I've lost, I found myself. Instead of investing in my career, I buy silly leather outfits and crawl around on the floor pretending to be a puppy dog with people who enjoy doing the same. This gets me out of my head. I read books and noodle around with my novel, and I mostly don't wonder where all of this is headed. I can feel oblivion coming for me, as it comes one day for all people. And in the meantime, I am getting better at studying the solitude to be found on Earth. On good days, I can allow the animal inside me to luxuriate in the pleasures of a long stretch across the bed, a mouth-watering bowl of pasta with vodka sauce, the biting wind on my neck as I walk. On bad days, I wonder why my body is still so insistent upon soaking up so much pleasure, when I have done nothing to earn it. I know that I will only get more easily rattled, sensitive, and weak with time. I believe I have some people around me who can deal with that. About 85% of my friend group is unemployed, by my count. They're frazzled, burnt out, broken-backed, traumatized, and tired. I spend a lot of my time collapsed on their sofas, listening to them complain about their health problems and not offering fake supportive cliches. We play video games, watch movies, get high, order takeout, and rearrange the furniture. It's not showy, and it makes nobody any money, but it's a life. When I imagine growing old, I hope it's something like this. Lots of time with the people I love, and lots of pleasure amidst the aching joints and wet coughs. Hia is still trying to figure out what her post-burnout life will look like. I figured out I can't make sculptures from raw clay anymore, but I can paint and glaze ceramics that come pre-made, she says. I can't cook a meal from scratch, but I can crack an egg in a bag of frozen hash and add seasoning. These small accomplishments sustain her. I'm trying to find gratitude that my husband and parents are able to take care of me, she shares. That was my therapy homework this week, to journal about things I am grateful for each day. Some days it is the dumbest stuff, like I saw a Shiba Inu. I made us really good hot chocolate with raspberry sauce. She hesitates and begins to say her reactions make her sound like a little kid. It's an instinct I know well. Some of the greatest pleasures of my life are simply being held, of petting a creature or being petted like one, of eating marshmallows and peanut butter in front of the projector while I watch a show. It can all feel so pitiful, how much comfort I need, that my heart is this ripped open hole pulling inward with so much need. My life with disability can look so damn childish and small. Hell yeah, I saw a corgi puppy on Saturday. Hell yeah, let's celebrate that. There's so many corgis in my neighborhood, including this one like skunk colored one that has its full tail. Corgis are very popular around here, and I have no problem with that. But taken from another angle, my life has become so much vaster than it was before. How many meals, how many hugs, how many satisfying rough textures under my fingertips did I miss when I was dashing from one job to another? All of the impressive work that I did when I was getting burnt out is gone from me now, but the pleasures and relationships that I've cultivated have stayed. Burnout asks me whether I need to claw at the whole world with both hands, and it suggests that what I'm holding is already more than enough. There is a wealth all around. I need only to dwell within it and witness it, rather than rushing on to the next thing. And I need people, of course, to care for and receive care from, so that I can continue to remain here as long as my body lets me. That's the piece. Lots of wonderful responses in the comments here on Substack. One of the best conversations that any of my Substack pieces have birthed. If you want to check out the piece yourself, access the links to the studies and prior essays that I reference here, you can head on over to drdevonprice.substack.com. If you want the exact URL, I'll put it in the description on YouTube, but it's /p/u-/might/-not/recover/ or dash from dash burnout. You get it. You know what I'm saying. If you're looking at the screen, you see what the URL is, but the link will be there. I used to listen to this old sci-fi podcast where the host would like spell out URLs. He was like a hippie boomer, and I just always found it so charming when he would be like http:// No, I'm doing it. So yes, that is the piece. Thank you everybody for being here. Let's take a look at the chat. I know I've missed some great chat messages. People sharing about their experience of burnout here. Liz Anders says, I recently downloaded an app that can register/detect what bird is singing/chirping, and it's my new favorite thing, catching birds on it like Pokemon when I'm outside. Yes, so I do sometimes some volunteer beach cleanings here in Chicago at the Gay Beach, and they encourage us to use an app to log all of the plants and birds and, invasive species, native species, etc. Let me see what it's called. It's like that. It's like Pokemon, but for actual nature. It's called iNaturalist. And apparently researchers use that data. So they want you to just scan things and have the app like identify what you're looking at and upload a picture, and researchers will look at it, which is really cool. And we very fortunate and thankful in Chicago to have a pretty robust effort to regrow native plants in our beaches and parks. I've seen huge changes in the time that I've lived here, and there's lots of like native grasses and controlled burnings, and we dig up invasive species. It's lovely, and keeping track of that is really cool. Amoral Unicorn, hello, says, me realizing how many of these I've read already. Work is a chronic illness. If you're not paid to be crazy, you get institutionalized. Yes, there's a collective mental illness, quote unquote, except it's considered being normal insane, that is like being a work human. And if you go insane in a different way, then they kick you out of there. Male Valen says, I'm reading the book The Hollow Half, which I think you would like. It's by a Palestinian American who's recovering from anorexia. Oh, dip. Let me write that down. Oh, let me find a post-it note. That sounds incredible. Thank you, Male Valence. The Hollow Half. Damn. That sounds incredible. And tough, but very valuable. Let's see. Waluigi Bowser says, aren't all neurodivergent people institutionalized and not just autistic people? Oh, yeah. I mean, it depends. Some of us skirt detection, it doesn't happen to us, but yeah, borderline, suicidal people, eating disorder people, substance users. Name a neurodivergent person whose population isn't at risk of being institutionalized. I mean, I can't really think of one. Very, very pervasive problem institutionally for the community. Valence says, I can only work 15 hours per week. Yep. Getting to that point of recognizing that about yourself and knowing how to gauge it is so challenging, so difficult. But once you hit that point of like, oh, work is not supposed to hurt me. I'm not supposed to feel like I'm exploding. Like for me, like when the stress gets bad, I feel like I'm just like that Paul Rudd gif of like, oh shit, I'm okay. I'm filled beyond to bursting with just stress, and I'm just thinking about the things on my calendar, and I'm pissed, and every email is a threat, and like it's still not intuitive to me that like an actual healthy work life rest balance feels like, oh, I can do this thing and I have time today to do other things. I can go do my laundry. I can go take a walk. What do I want to do? Like that feels sinful. That feels evil. Like not doing things. Like, and that has been a big part of my recovery journey lately too, is just getting myself as much time as possible away from the computer, away from the doom scrolling email. You should be doing something productive machine. Like, and for me, true to form, harm reduction / exercise bulimia, whatever. I go on long runs. I go on long bike rides. I swim. I walk around in the parks. I go like thrift shopping in my neighborhood, or really I go shoplifting from Salvation Army because they're evil. Like I have to just physically get myself away from the things that will make me feel like I'm supposed to be working. Like I find it very hard to just be at home, not at the computer. And you need that. Yes, the overemployed subreddit. Those people are freaks of the same type that I am, overworkers. So visit that subreddit, but be careful. Because they have a lot of tips for like how to get away with only working a few hours per week at your job without them detecting that you actually have a whole second or third or fourth job. And a lot of that is about just scheduling emails, managing your work calendar, doing work right before a meeting so you can bring a deliverable to the meeting, and so it looks like you've been working even if you just only spent a few hours that day producing something to bring. Like noticing what you're going to actually be noticed and evaluated on, and working only on those things. Yeah, you don't want to go to the atheist subreddit either. Yeah, no, just watch the movie Heretic. Accurate simulation of r/atheism. It's very helpful, but be careful because you don't want to actually become an overemployed person. But take that energy to only doing one job seems neat. Yes, exactly. That's the idea. Take the hacks. The anti-work subreddit is also an option, but they've kind of gotten weird over time for complex reasons. They've kind of liberalized, and one of their main moderators kind of got like pedo jacketed, and all this awful stuff happened. So I don't really go on there anymore, but Overemployed is a very funny subreddit, and it has some useful strats for how to get away with not working your job all day long, especially if you have an office job, which is again obviously a huge luxury, but or a remote job. Most of them have multiple remote jobs, but there's tips there worth looking at if that seems relevant to you. If that's not your situation, maybe not so much. That you can't really be overemployed at like a food service job, like or a job where you have to physically be there and be observed. But there are jobs like working security, late night security, or like late night hotel check in. It can be unsafe depending on the place. But there was one trans woman Instagrammer who she was talking about how she loves working late night hotel shifts because there's almost hardly any coworkers, there's hardly any customers coming in, so she gets to kind of just like hang out in the back on the computer managing this hotel, and it's less public scrutiny. So it was really a nice place for her to be in the early stages of her transition. And not necessarily a job that you need like a degree for or like anything like that. Like, and it's something that you can't really replace with AI yet. So like I've heard good things from some people about late night security shifts, late night store or hotel shifts, things like that. That can give people a chance to just chill. So I had a few jobs like that many years ago, just like monitoring like a computer lab that like nobody went to on the weekends, and so just like chilling there was like very restorative. It's harder than ever to get those kinds of jobs or to get a job period. So I just want to acknowledge that. I do know that, but I have heard positive stories from people who have gotten gigs like that where you can kind of fuck off a little bit and recover energy, maybe read a book on the clock. What else we got here in chat? Oops. Oh man, the chat jumped all the way up to the top. I was working overnight hotel front desk when I was working too much, but I liked it years ago until I needed a stable sleep schedule for my health. Yeah, that's the rub. Sleep disruption. It's not those kind of shifts are sure not for the majority of people, not for the long term. Lysander says, living in a so-called socialist country, it's difficult how there is free resources and help for burnout, etc., but they're very buried in bureaucracy and the feeling that you have to prove that you're burned out enough. This and that specific spaces of the welfare state don't necessarily communicate with one another, so they might have different rules and you might have to go through the same process again. Yep. And all of that's by design, right? The more difficult it is to get these resources, the fewer people apply for them. And I don't know about your country, but I know that, you know, throughout like the UK and like parts of Europe, they're trying to imitate the US as much as possible by cutting funding to these things and reevaluating people and trying to force them back into work. And, you know, with the welfare state in the UK, that's killed a measurable number of people, disabled people who were ruled fit to work because they could technically function for 10 or 15 hours per week and forced into work, and then they could no longer maintain their lives because the 10 hours of functionality were spent on work, and then they passed away. Speaking of burnout, I just had to take a nap. Hell yes, we love it. We love naps. I actually personally don't like naps because they fuck up my sleep schedule, but we love rest. We love rest. We love doing fuck all. I'm a big fan of the midday masturbation rest period. And, you know, thankfully I have a kink that means I listen to basically glorified meditation files on a regular basis. And that is something that I've had to just also like learn and accept about myself, that like, no, I'm not just like a nasty pervert, even though that's also cool. Taking time to like listen to a little hypnosis file and relax to it, it changes my body physiologically. Like I feel less tension and stress. I can feel like it's easier for me to talk. It's easier for me to sing. Like my singing lessons lately have been a real object lesson in that, because on days where I'm more stressed out, I can't hit the same notes like because my throat is tighter and tenser, and versus days where I take it easy or like go on a long run or something and get the stress out of my body, it's easier for me to sing. It's easier for me to breathe. It's crazy. And I hate people less. It's like, whoa. And the same thing with like if I take time to meditate, jerk off, listen to a hypnosis file, whatever it is that works for me personally. Um, our retirement age recently just became the highest in all of Europe, Lucinda says. 70 years old. That's so fucked up. That's awful. That's worse than the US. I think here it's 67. I think. Unless they've upped it again since last I was writing about it. Jesus Christ. Um, Unemployed is good. We were talking earlier about a subreddit called Overemployed where people work multiple jobs but don't let on to their employers that that's what they're doing. Yeah, thanks, May Valence, for clarifying that. We stand unemployed people here. We love unemployed people. It just usually sucks to be one structurally in society. That doesn't mean we think it's bad to be. We mean it in the moral sense, right? Like, fuck morality. But it often sucks to be in society. But yeah, finding that baseline of exhaustion for you and what your triggers are is so challenging. I've talked about the calendar madness I get when I can barely even look at my calendar to update something. Then I know I need to start canceling some shit, or I can't stand like looking at an email. I need to rework some shit. So that's a big one for me. Feeling like I'm going to explode and be overwhelmed, being pissed at other people, feeling like I don't have time to eat or like do a dish, or like getting annoyed by my baby kitty wanting to just play for a minute. Like that means I'm fucking up and I need to cut things back. I don't think I miss my pre-chronic illness self, actually, May Valence says. Yeah, I'm kind of there too at this point. I wouldn't want to be that person again. I didn't have a good life. I didn't have fun when I was that person at all. Like, I just did all this shit. Like, I mean, I guess sometimes I got the taste of conquest, of accomplishment. But I was so tense all the fucking time. It just sucked. Like, Edge Peasant says, I'm finding that forcing myself to spend time and do stuff with local friends helps me regain some motivation and energy. Yeah. I have to really assign myself that homework sometimes of like hang out with people, do things. I went to a trans beach day yesterday with a friend who she really didn't want to go, but she said, oh, my son made me go because he could tell that I was overwhelmed and it was time to eat my vegetables. And she had a good time and she felt better after she was there. But it's really easy to say, I don't have time to do this. I need to do work. Chilling with the homies and properly chilling. Not thinking about work the whole time. Getting out of your head. Very hard. It took me months this year of doing dramatically less and scheduling fuck off time. Not just doing less, but like engaging with my special interests, reading, going on long walks far away from the computer, getting myself out of the work environment, changing my writing deadlines for myself, reducing it, all that shit. Like months of that before I was like, oh, I'm having emotions again. I'm enjoying things again. Like I was grimly doing things that I used to enjoy and not enjoying them for a while. Just like sulking on my walk and being like, I feel nothing looking at this tree. You know, stupid trees. I'm touching the stupid grass. And then finally, I'm just now starting to get back to the point of like, oh, this is beautiful. Like, oh, I can witness things in my neighborhood and be thankful for them. All that kind of stuff. And it took a long time just to get back to like having those feelings. I could be better at scheduling fuck off time. It depends on what works for you, but I know that helps. If it does in a way that doesn't tip off the not rejection sensitive, the PDA, like fuck you, don't tell me what to do instinct, you know? It can't be too strict, but I have to really like give myself things to do. Singing lessons, long walks, video games to play. Things that can feel like I'm engaging in a task rather than doing nothing, but that will also keep me from doing the things that hurt me, which is like overworking. It's hard for me to go out when I don't have the privilege to afford or access to N95 masks. Like sometimes I want to put my foot down and give up. Yeah, that's a very legitimate feeling, and a lot of events aren't accessible in that way. Virtual events help people a lot, but I know for me, I need to be physically out of the space sometimes. And if you're physically disabled in ways that make that even harder, like then you have this stimulation need still that you just can't satisfy, and it's brutal. It's Spectorg says, I became a member at my local movie theater. Seems weird, but it's a nice way to get out in my small ski mountain biking town that isn't physically taxing. And I can still see townies in a chill setting that isn't too socially heavy or long. I'm really lacking in closer friendships locally, though. Yes, if you have the blessing of having, especially like a small like indie theater near you, look at the programming. Again, I'm spoiled for options here. Here in Chicago, we have the Music Box, which has lots of like queer screenings, vintage porn screenings, horror movies, Q&As with creators and filmmakers. We also have Facets Theater that has regular clubs, like they have an anime club. They have like they had like a city pop DJ come in for the anime club this month. Horror screenings, Valentine's Day, special like themed events, vintage things, really obscure finds. Like, it's really nice to have a way to be social without having to talk all the time. Whether that's volunteering on a task, some kind of physical activity for those who can do that, a movie theater. That stuff is really nice. It's a small nonprofit, and we have lots of free programming. That's dope. Yeah. And it's often a little bit more accessible than a lot of other hobbies, or like, concerts are so fucking expensive. But like sometimes a membership at a movie theater can be like under $50 for the month, or like $20 or something, or like a hundred or a couple $100 a year or whatever, which is more accessible to a greater range of people. And sitting in the dark, just sitting in the dark in the cool air, eating a little snack, shit's good. Keeps you off your phone. No more phone time. That's very rewarding. And harder to find. Things that get you off the computer, even though the computer is also such a godsend for so many of us. I joined an activist group that's doing summer buddy stuff right now, which will help a lot. That sounds nice. Classes. Check out your local park district buildings. They often have classes, libraries, book clubs. Try that shit out. Like, some of them are going to be way cooler than you might think. There's just like some freak in your community who's putting it together, and you can be their buddy. Give it a shot. If you have the spoons, if you have the ability, it's okay sometimes to just give up on your recovery. Like, that's a chronic illness thing. We all have those phases where we're like, I don't want to be well. Fuck it. I don't want to try. I'm sick of trying. Nothing has worked. I don't want to get better. I'm never going to get better. I'm going to give up hope because hope can hurt you. Like, it's okay to be in that spot. I just do want to say that as we're talking about burnout recovery. If your energy is like, I don't want to try this shit, none of it's going to work, maybe now's not the time, I hope that eventually for you reach that point where you're like that Sufjan Stevens song and you're singing, I want to be well, whatever that means for me, and I have it in me to try things. But I'm not trying to give you PDA. Like, if you don't want to do it right now, don't do it right now. Like, it is unfair. It is hard. There isn't enough resources. It's a ton of work, and sometimes it doesn't quite work the way you thought it was going to. Like, all that's true. Like, you don't have to do it. Unfortunately, if you personally want to feel a modicum better, you are going to be the person who's going to have to do it. But maybe you're not in a space right now where you can do that. You don't have the support and the resources. Sometimes you just got to be fucking pissed and depressed for months. That preserves energy. That serves a function. So, like, I don't know. I just always want to shout that out. That's a stage of burnout and depression, and surviving it too. Like, it's okay to be hopeless sometimes. Yeah, going out is cool, but have you played any Owlcats RPGs for 100+ hours? That's impressive. I have not. I want to get back into playing more games, desperately. But I find it so hard to lock in now. Being at the computer is the work thing, that like hurts my back and makes me stressed. So it's hard to lock in and enjoy games the way I did as a kid. I need to go to my library more often. Libraries are so good. I used to like going to bars and just people watching. Oh yeah, karaoke. Though maybe not for you right now since you're on a voice lesson break. Open mics, comedy nights. I like generic open mic nights, trivia, bar trivia, bingo. Lots of bars have these things, and even if you don't participate, you can people watch and just get yourself a little seltzer and just chill. I used to bring a book to the bar and just read. It's nice. It's great. We love it. I love that shit. Sometimes that's all I got energy for, and it's definitely, gets me out of the house. Obsessing over wellness, getting better recovery has often backfired for me. It can become another push towards self-optimization. And we don't need all that shit. Like, as anybody with chronic health issues knows, you try a million things and most of them don't work. You get all these tests, you see all these doctors have nothing to offer you. You take a supplement, you get a treatment, it hurts, it's expensive, it doesn't work. You can't keep doing that all the time and stay motivated. There's taking care of yourself burnout too. And it is okay and necessary, I think, sometimes to just be like, no, I'm hopeless right now. I don't have the energy to marshal up hope or to try something. That is a very real thing, and that's okay. That's a normal thing to feel. And it doesn't mean you're giving up on yourself forever to give up for now. And also, some people do give up on getting better and they make their peace with it and they're happier for it. I've heard from and spoken to a lot of people with chronic illnesses who say they reach a point where they say, oh, I'm not getting better. I've tried everything I can. I'm focusing now on just living the life that I can live the way I am and accepting it instead of trying to get back somewhere. And I think that's part of the message of this piece, that you might never get back to the way that you were. We all lose abilities over time and things that we get to do because of that. And that's like a real ass thing to mourn. And sometimes it's better to just mourn it and move on in your way and find what you can still get meaning out of. Yeah. For the record, I was seeing the theater membership as a fuck it move, and it was only this stream I considered it more of a positive framework. That's... Yeah, why did you shit on yourself for thinking that was a bad thing? Like, dissociating in the dark around people, that's great. It is both a fuck it thing and it's restorative. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes saying fuck it is the most restorative thing you can do. So, yeah. Maybe on good days you can give yourself a little credit for finding something that gets you out of the house and outside of your head that's, like, accessible to you and lets you consume new art, puts you around people, has you supporting a small theater and a place that's probably doing useful things for the community artistically. Like, keeping yourself alive. That's all fucking great. It was a great thought that you had to do that. Like, no issues, no notes. It's a great thing. And it's something I forget is an option a lot of the time. Just like going to a theater and chilling. But it's almost always there. Like, don't kill yourself. Go sit in a theater and watch a movie. Watch a fucked up movie. Unless you really, really, really have decided that you want to go that route. But, you can do it tomorrow. I just want to recover from burnout, but I find the diabetic shit irritating. My health insurance can't even cover up refills for my tests and poker needles. Healthcare management is itself such a huge cause of burnout. So, yeah, that makes complete sense, Waluigi Bowser. Like, just keeping yourself alive and maintaining everything that you need, that causes huge burnout. It's really tough. Evelyn says, yeah, I think my friend is too intense about getting better. Yeah, that goal-directed behavior, impulse, happens sometimes. And we hurt ourselves with it. But hopefully they figure it out. When I was not poor, I had a great time with an Alamo Drafthouse membership. I saw one anime movie like 10 times in theaters. That's so great. That's another thing, like stimming needs, or like repetition, familiarity, I think is another thing that, like, if you're really in like hardcore recovery mode, it's easy for me to forget. Like, I need to listen to music, make time to just listen to music, listen to songs I like, watch music videos I like, watch comfort shows, like program that shit in like you were going to a stupid yoga class that people tell you to take when you have chronic illness. Like, instead of going to physical therapy, watch your favorite anime 10 times. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes that's what you need recovery wise. Like, the stuff that is actually comforting to you, whatever that is. Familiarity, stimming, comforting textures, breaking shit, like chewing on shit, listening to the same song a million times, like whatever it is for you. That is like hardcore burnout recovery intensive. Burnout recovery boot camp, to make it sound hardcore when it's supposed to be not hardcore. Do that shit. That shit's important. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here for this conversation. This was really enjoyable and rewarding. I'm going to edit this together and put it on YouTube. So let me know, YouTube watchers, how you liked this format. Did you like having feedback from the chat? People who are here right now, let me know how you liked it. Did you like having me read the piece out live? If so, I'll continue doing this format more often. I think it's fun, technical issues aside. It was just nice to revisit this piece and see where we've been, see where we're going next. I'm glad people are liking it. I'm enjoying it too. And it's a way to feel productive without quite as much intensity as writing a new piece. Because sometimes I write too much shit. Story time with Devin. Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here. People watching on YouTube, you can read the full essays, all my work at drdevinprice.substack.com. If you're liking these videos, let me know what you're liking, what you'd like to see. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. I make all of my stuff free forever. I support pirating my books if that's how you want to get them. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time for the next one. And live watchers,